This week's edition of WWE SmackDown was not the most notable show overall, but it did once again feature a significant step forward in the Bloodline saga on the road to SummerSlam, as it was Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa taking out Randy Orton, putting him through the announce table, and doing it all while Cody Rhodes is helpless, tied up in the ropes. Quite a visual we got here on this edition of SmackDown as they continue to move towards what we know is going to be made official, and that is Cody Rhodes defending the WWE Undisputed title against Solo Sikoa at SummerSlam. And that was really the main theme of the show, because if you look at everything else on the card, there wasn't a whole lot, I think, that you got in terms of huge importance moving things forward towards SummerSlam, but you did get a couple things that we'll talk about. But we are going to start with the Bloodline, because, again, as I said, it wasn't just that they attacked Randy Orton, it was how they attacked him. And they took it to a level to where you heard commentary playing it up. This was kind of that same sort of eerily similar scenario for Randy Orton that kept him out for so long. He was on the shelf. He was on the sideline with the back injury. And now we know that back's not feeling too great after he was just put through a table and taken out multiple super kicks. He got hit with the steel steps. And then, again, who's watching all of this? It's Cody Rhodes. And I will go ahead and tell you guys right now, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button, because tomorrow on Sunday, I'm going to do a video now sort of connecting all the dots in how we know, we've mentioned it for a while now, we're going to get to that Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton match. But this may be the one thing that we learned a lot about how we're actually going to get there, because there was a lot you could read into the multiple segments you had on the show involving Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. So that video is coming here at Wrestling Reaction soon. So be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it. But back to how this actually plays into what we saw on SmackDown, because this was all about Randy Orton talking about having, Cody Rhodes is back here, and mentioning that he suggested that Kevin Owens was, the one that should stay home to deal with family matters and all of that. And so it did leave Cody in a position to where he's kind of all alone, right? Cody went in very confident. It's 1-on-4, but he's in the ring and he's ready to fight. It didn't turn out too well for Cody, because as we see here, he was once again on the receiving end of the numbers advantage from the Bloodline. And that's really been the story, right? When it comes to this current, iteration of the Bloodline, Solo has continued to add new members, and that has kind of put him in a position where they have 4. And as we keep saying, there may still be a 5th out there, depending on what they do with the former Hikuleo in New Japan. Is he going to come in as Tama Tonga? Is he going to join this new version of the Bloodline? These are all potential options. But for now, you do have a situation where they are always kind of at, at an advantage, because they have the numbers on everyone. And was probably not the smartest move for Cody to put himself in this position at 1-on-4, but Cody was ready to fight. He wanted to get his revenge, right, based on what the Bloodline has continued to try to do to him, what Solo has tried to do to get that championship, and he's going to get an opportunity at SummerSlam. But of course, the problem was Cody, by doing that, he put himself in a position where he's sort of, alone, and that did force Randy Orton to come out. And as I said, I will do another video going a little bit more in depth as to what that could mean for these two in their relationship moving forward. But for now, it did once again end with the Bloodline standing tall. And I think you have to sort of look at this now and understand that, like we said, this is not a match. And trust me, I've seen all the reaction, and I've seen some of you guys weigh in on this. I know that Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa as the main event of SummerSlam is not going to be the most popular move. But I also know that this is something that they are using as a means to an end. You want to do that with every, big PLE, especially what may be considered your second or third biggest PLE of the year. Do you want to have it as sort of a means to an end? Maybe not. But we know for this one, it's all setting up the big return of Roman Reigns. And so, because of that, I'm okay with Cody versus Solo, because you could not have made it more clear here on this show that that's what they're heading towards, even if they've not officially announced it. Even Cody himself said on SmackDown that, it's all but official. Like, they just need Nick Aldis to make it official. And so that's where we are. And coming out of this, you're going to have Cody even more motivated and really willing to accept whatever terms, right, that Solo may have for this match. I don't know if you get some kind of stipulation out of this, perhaps. We'll see if that's what we get to. I would think maybe you want to do something like that. But, also if you do it, Cody knows that if there's like no DQ or something like that, well, you automatically are going to have the Bloodline interfere, but maybe that's what they want. And I mentioned in the previous video, which you can check out here on the channel, about, potentially seeing how Roman Reigns makes his return at SummerSlam. Do you get some people that come back to sort of help Cody? Because now, if Orton is out of the equation, you've got to think that given sort of what they just did to Orton, he's got to be out for at least several weeks, right? To heal up the back or however they decide to do it. But we will go more in depth on that in the Cody and Orton video. But you have Kevin Owens who can come back now to sort of try to help Cody. I mean, Owens is at home dealing with the family situation, but now he's got to come back, right? Because now Cody is sort of by himself because maybe Orton is out of the mix for now. And so Owens has got to come back. Do they do the same thing to Kevin Owens? You guys know I've mentioned too, I think there's a real scenario, right? You could do Kevin Owens versus Jacob Fatu as a singles match on the undercard at SummerSlam because they've kind of teased those two being really, connected together, even going back to Money in the Bank and before. So I feel like that's probably more likely than doing an Orton versus Jacob Fatu match at this point because I just don't know how you put Orton in that match. I mean, this felt like a pretty, like I said, significant development to have Orton take this Shield powerbomb and get not just that, right? Like I said, he got the super kicks, he got hit by the steps. I mean, Orton was just getting, bounced every which way. So I think that would at least be something that would make sense if they decide to do that with Owens and Jacob Fatu. And look, if that happens, I don't know the betting odds, but I'm willing to bet Jacob Fatu is probably going to win that match. And that's where, like I mentioned in the Roman Reigns video, you've got to take out Orton and Owens to get to the point to where Cody is by himself, because then that opens up the opportunity to bring a Sami Zayn, a Jey Uso, and Jimmy Uso, all these guys back into the mix. And again, you can watch the other stuff we have here, just sort of breaking down how all that could sort of intertwine together. But that was really the big story here, was definitely setting up the stage that Cody could be by himself, and we don't know what this means for Randy Orton. As always, what I like about what Triple H does in this era is you always have questions coming out of these kind of things, right? It's how long is Randy Orton going to be out? What does Cody do now? Is Solo one step closer to actually winning the championship? These are all, important questions we have to ask coming out of that huge segment in the main event. So I think that was definitely, a big part of this. And I mean, we mentioned, like, it's for Solo right now, it's all about trying to make people acknowledge him, right? And that's what that was the setup here, is he said, he was going to make sure that everyone acknowledged him by the end of the night. Cody would not acknowledge Solo, therefore they took it out on Randy Orton. So Cody's actions are having consequences now on his friends. And I think, as I mentioned, that's going to play into something pretty big probably in the future. But really, like I said, that was kind of the main thing on this show. It really was all about the Bloodline here standing strong once again together and showing and really pushing the dangerous levels that Jacob Fatu is willing to go to. Like, I think they have just continued to make this sort of, kind of perfect little touch with Jacob Fatu. I mean, everything they've done with him, I think, has been fantastic. And they've pushed him as the badass and, I keep saying the most dangerous man in the world. Like, that's how they're pushing him. And they need to keep doing it that way because we talk about the eventual Roman versus Solo match. I mean, Jacob Fatu versus Roman is feeling like a pretty big match, too, at some point. Same way with Cody versus Jacob Fatu. Orton versus, like I said, I would think we're getting the Owens one at some point soon. But, that was another, I think, positive here on the show. But, to go beyond that, we started the show with the Bayley and Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax thing. I did like the fact that they at least, started to set in motion some things where, I mean, Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax, we said if Tiffany was going to win the briefcase, it made sense because you wanted to start to tease that relationship and that dynamic between her and Nia Jax, right? Knowing that Nia Jax is the one who's about to challenge Bayley for the championship. And so you want to start putting in motion that idea that, okay, at any time, Tiffany Stratton could cash in if Nia Jax wins. But also, I like the fact here that these two, you get the 2-on-1, they take out Bayley. Then it's like, okay, well, Tiffany Stratton has to think, and you saw them kind of make the motions there. Nia Jax is leaving the ring, and Tiffany Stratton's kind of thinking, okay, well, hold on a second. Now's the time to cash in, right? I mean, we just destroyed Bayley. She's out of the picture. Like, let's go cash in right now. Like, that just makes perfect sense. Like, don't insult anyone's intelligence. She should be thinking about cashing in right there. And then Nia Jax comes to get in the middle. They did the camera shot. I always loved how they do these camera shots sometimes. they do the camera shot where they're zoomed in on Tiffany Stratton and the referee, so you can't see that Nia is actually coming behind Tiffany Stratton, and then you get her kind of, jump into the picture there, and she prevents the cash in, and Tiffany Stratton's like, no, it's okay, I'm good. So, yeah, I think they're going to have some fun with that, just playing up the dynamic between those two, and now it makes sense. Like initially when you're thinking, okay, why is Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax, why are they connected? Now it all makes sense, right? This is the way they should be doing it, because now, she's missed Money in the Bank. Nia Jax has a chance to win the championship, and then Bayley's there sort of, trying to hold on for dear life now with everything that's going on. So I think there's a lot of scenarios that could play out at SummerSlam with that. If Nia Jax wins, there's a possible cash in for Tiffany Stratton, but I would think you want to take that a little bit further. But we'll see what they decide to do, because it really is a matter of who wins that match with Nia Jax and Bayley. I could see that going either way, but there's probably more of a story to tell with Nia winning. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'll give some more thoughts on that as we start to study that a little bit more here moving forward. But really the other theme, I guess, of the night was Nick Aldis not being there, right? You had Chelsea Green waiting, and she's waiting outside trying. Of course, she's got the brace on. We knew that Chelsea losing in the fashion that she did at Money in the Bank, we knew she would play this up. And so you could definitely see that. And she was kind of waiting back there with Piper Niven and all that, and you had Pretty Deadly coming waiting for Nick Aldis, and then of course Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill are coming to celebrate with Naomi after she got the win over Blair Davenport. Blair Davenport attacks. Like there's a lot going on backstage on this show. You had a lot of those things kind of tying together here on this. And so we also set up, Andrade versus Carmelo Hayes. That's going to take place next week. And so we kind of now know what's next for these two. I'm curious to see how these two continue to be kind of used in different ways moving forward, because, it's kind of one where other than, a couple things here or there, you've not really had these two had just those hardcore type feuds, huge, intense rivalries or anything. You haven't had them kind of connected in any way to those just yet. And so, I'm curious just to see that they are certainly talents that they were put in the Money in the Bank match for a reason. They have a lot of potential. We know, and, Carmelo is someone who clearly, like we said, I think Carmelo can use that pinfall win over Randy Orton at some point in the future. He mentioned it here on SmackDown again, and I think that's something he can kind of hold on to as he's kind of, making his quest for, being a champion and all that. Andrade still feels like, someone that they want to put the investment into, but it's just, again, you've got to have, I think, a really good story attached to it, and you've got to sort of give a reason, for his next sort of step forward. And maybe that comes after SummerSlam, right? Because SummerSlam feels like a place where you could have a bit of a reset, which ties into the next thing, which was LA Knight coming out and again, making it all but official that you're going to have LA Knight challenging Logan Paul for the United States Championship at SummerSlam. Of course, you guys remember way back, we were having those conversations before WrestleMania. We're thinking, is that the WrestleMania match for LA Knight? Wound up being AJ Styles. But this is a good one because it is in Cleveland. That's you got Logan Paul coming to Cleveland here, but LA Knight is so over. And I think this is a great opportunity for LA Knight to win his first championship. I think this is one where Logan Paul comes back next week and you have him sort of respond to this official contract that is in place, and then he signs it, and then we're good to go, right? Like that's the setup here. And so I think that the main thing of this show was a setup show because you had a lot of things that were sort of now just waiting to be made official. And it feels like it's like one of those shows where you just have to, okay, we're coming off of Money in the Bank. We're just going to take the gear down a little bit, and now we're going to really ramp things up from here. And so that was kind of this show. I mean, I can't say that this was probably the most watchable show, SmackDown-wise, that we've seen in a while, but I do think this is one where, again, you've got a lot of things that are set in motion, mostly focused on the Bloodline as it usually is, but you have the setup now for LA Knight versus Logan Paul for the United States title. That'll be a big match. A lot of sort of drama in the women's division. Like we said, you got Blair Davenport trying to sort of establish herself, but she loses to Naomi. You've got DIY. I don't even mention them. They were the main event, but sort of a predictable, finish, I think, for DIY to retain the titles against Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. The tension continues between those two, and we know that's going to lead to something here in the near future. And then to kind of bring it full circle, you did have Jacob Fatu take out DIY. So I think that is, at least notable. I know, trust me, I've seen the online reaction to that. People just saying that Jacob Fatu just completely buried the tag team division. I don't think that's the case because, like I said from the beginning, this really is all about just pushing Jacob Fatu as someone who is just absolutely ruthless and can take out anyone. Remember, Jacob Fatu took out Randy Orton, Kevin Owens, and Cody Rhodes on his debut night. So him taking out DIY, whether they're the tag champs or not, it doesn't bother me because you're really trying to establish, like I said, that he is just this unstoppable force. And there's nothing to make you think any different so far because at every turn, even when you think someone has gotten the upper hand on Jacob Fatu, he comes back. Or Randy Orton hits the DDT and he pops right back up, right? So I have no problem with that because, look, DIY did just become the champions, but it's not like they've been these long-running tag team champions, right? They just sort of been in the mix for a long time. They just won the titles a week ago. They get a successful defense here, but they just found themselves in the way of the Samoan werewolf. And unfortunately, anyone else who's done that so far has felt the consequences. So, hey, maybe that leads to a situation where you now have DIY intertwined with the Bloodline a little bit. And maybe you get a tag team title defense there at some point with some sort of combination. So I could definitely see that because we know Triple H likes to, have multiple stories going for different people at the same time. So you can definitely see that with the way that they had Jacob Fatu take it to DIY on this show. But there you go, guys. Those are just some, as usual, just some kind of random thoughts and reaction to this week's edition of SmackDown. I didn't think this was probably, again, the most noteworthy show overall, but there are still, like I said, important things here that are going to set the table for what's to come. And sometimes you just got to have those shows, especially coming off of PLE. And now we are officially on the road to SummerSlam, and a lot of things are going to be in motion here as we get there. But as always, I want to know what you guys think. What did you think about this edition of SmackDown? What did you think about the big angle, the Bloodline putting Randy Orton through the table, Shield Bomb style, and Cody Rhodes having to sit there helpless and watch? And what do you think about this thing moving forward? As I teased earlier, I'm going to have a video on this whole Cody and Orton situation. Have a lot of stuff to say about that based on what we saw on this show and some things we've seen kind of hinted at in previous editions as well. So you guys, as always, I appreciate the feedback. Be sure to subscribe button, hit the like button on your way out, and let me know your thoughts on this week's edition of WWE SmackDown.